Design evolution is an interesting journey in the Star Trek universe. Today we look at the Walker-class light exploration cruiser, first introduced in Star Trek Discovery Season 1. Hold the front door, some of you are not keen on Discovery, but stick with me. The design of the Walker-class is pretty cool, especially as some of the ships from the Battle of the Binary Stars are a clear evolution of the ships from Star Trek Enterprise's era. Represented by the USS Shenzhou, likely as one of the last Walker-class starships, the design was considered old by 2249. We don't see any other ships of the class active in the 2250s or 2260s, which is a shame. The outdated design was likely replaced with new modern Starfleet designs such as the Archer type or Farragut type starships. Hey everyone, my name's Captain Jack and welcome to Trek Central. In this week's Star Trek Starships Explained video, we take a look at one of the very first starships introduced in Star Trek Discovery. Yes, I know some of you aren't super keen on that series, but stick with me. I think the Walker class is a very interesting design, especially being designed by some Star Trek veterans. We'll go into more of that in our behind the scenes section, but if you do enjoy these videos, then consider hitting the subscribe button. Don't forget to tell us what ship you'd like to explore next in the video comment section below. Okay, let's take it away. In your typical Starfleet design style, the Walker class consisted of a saucer section. However, it notably featured an integrated lateral position navigational deflector. You could somewhat compare this to the integrated deflector array on the NX-01 class of starships, which included Jonathan Archer's Enterprise. A compact secondary hull complemented the saucer section, and found itself connected to two nacelles, which were attached by pylons extended beneath the ship's impressive superstructure. Similar to starships of the 24th century, the Walker class was fitted with escape pods that would be launched from breakaway panels lining the top of the saucer section. We can compare this to escape pods on the Sovereign class of starships. This type of escape pod mechanism was shown by the USS Enterprise E and also the Intrepid class USS Voyager. As demonstrated by the USS Shenzhou, the Walker class was capable of atmospheric flight. The ship's design, which featured thrusters positioned all over the ventral hull, allowed it to enter atmosphere and assist Starfleet officers on the ground. In terms of tactical ability, the Walker class was known to be fitted with phase cannons, standard phasers, and photon torpedo launchers. Of course, it was also fitted with your typical and standard type of shields by the time of the 23rd century. However, while these armaments might be impressive to some, the ship class could easily be outmatched against aggressive forces such as the Klingon fleet and then some. Size-wise, and it gets a bit complicated here, the Walker class comes in at a length of 423.37 meters, according to some technical data and sources, though this is backed up by the book The Art of Star Trek Discovery. The size of the Walker class would make it around 1.5 times as long as the original series Constitution class Enterprise. The size of that ship was also increased by a factor of 1.5 for Star Trek Discovery Season 1 and technically Season 2, you get my point. The size of that ship was increased by a factor of 1.5 for Star Trek Discovery. With a crew complement of 150, the Walker class consisted of 13 decks and was able to reach a maximum warp speed of 6. It featured 2 impulse engines on the saucer section of the design. The bridge design was what stood out in the Walker class. Unlike other Federation starships, which had their bridge at the top of the saucer section, the Walker had its bridge on the underside of Deck 7. This was adjacent to the captain's ready room. The bridge allowed for some stellar views of space outside the ship, therefore aiding in the visual research by the crew, as demonstrated by those on board the USS Shenzhou. As mentioned, the Walker class was deemed outdated by the 2250s. As such, some of its internal systems were also deemed obsolete by even the late 2240s. The ship's transporter systems were lateral vector transporters. The Vulcans and Starfleet had phased out this transport system design due to the massive amount of power it would draw from ships. However, older vessels like the Walker class USS Shenzhou and the USS Hiawatha still had lateral vector transports equipped, likely those are either too complex to replace or just not worth updating an old design. While the Walker class was considered old, some parts were obviously still up to scratch with the rest of Starfleet. For example, the brand new Crossfield class design still used the same internal arrangements, nearly identical corridors, and crew quarters show this. Yes, we know this is just down to set design, but you get my point. We know the Walker class of starship was introduced in the 23rd century. However, by the time of 2249, the Walker class was considered old compared to other starships in the fleet. Therefore, we could theorize that the ship was perhaps one of the earliest 23rd century designs commissioned by Starfleet. This can also be backed up by its warp speed. If Archer's NX-01 could reach a top speed of warp 5, but the Walker class can only do warp 6, that might also put it somewhere close to the NX-01's end-of-life year date. As mentioned, the only Walker class we've seen doing things on screen is the USS Shenzhou. It was introduced in Star Trek Discovery Season 1's episode, The Vulcan Hello. Launched into service sometime before 2249, most likely a few decades before that, the Shenzhou was constructed at the San Francisco Fleet Yards on Earth. As all good Star Trek starships have to have a core motto, so did the Shenzhou. It reads, "All existing things are really one." This is a quote from Zheng Zhou, a Chinese philosopher. At this time, the ship visited Vulcan, when newly appointed First Officer, Michael Burnham, came on board. She had recently graduated from the Vulcan Science Academy and was introduced by her adoptive father and guardian, Vulcan Ambassador Sarek. In 2256, the Shenzhou visited the Capusian homeworld. A landing party which consisted of Captain Philippa Georgiou and First Officer Commander Michael Burnham revived a dry water well. The mission almost went pear-shaped when a communications interference from a fast-moving storm disrupted the away team's ability to contact the ship. Thankfully, Captain Georgiou made the mark of a Starfleet insignia in the sand, allowing the Shenzhou to come into atmosphere and beam him on board. The ship and crew found themselves dispatched to an unnamed binary star system. This was to initially investigate damage to an interstellar relay used by Starfleet. However, this mission would prove fatal for not only the crew of the Shenzhou, but also Federation as a whole.
Captain Philippa Georgiou of the USS Shenzhou. We are on the outermost borders of Federation space, as always. We come in peace.
Attack there!
The outmatched Starfleet ship soon found itself facing off against a Klingon vessel, and then an entire Klingon fleet. Captain Georgiou would try and communicate peacefully with the Klingons, even while her own First Officer attempted to mutiny command and strike first. Michael Burnham believed striking first would show the Klingons they mean business. Unfortunately, the Battle of the Binary Stars kicked off as the Shenzhou was the first ship to be attacked. Starfleet reinforcements had arrived and one of the bloodiest battles in history started. The Shenzhou took multiple direct hits, causing hull damage. While the ship tried to defend the crippled USS Toplana half, it lost its shields and then impulse engines. Thankfully, the USS Europa, under the command of Admiral Brett Anderson, arrived to offer aid, yet this was cut short. A Klingon cleave ship rammed into the Europa, crippling her systems and cutting the tractor beam which was still pulling the Shenzhou out of a collision course with an asteroid. As the Europa self-destructed, in order to take out both ships, the Shenzhou would drift back into the asteroid. Captain Georgiou led an offensive to the Klingon capital ship and successfully killed its commander, T'Kuvma, but she was killed in action. The surviving crew members of the Shenzhou, under the command of Lieutenant Commander Saru, were forced to abandon ship in escape pods and leave the Walker-class ship to its own fate. 6 months later, the Shenzhou was still crippled and left adrift. Klingon warriors Vok and Lavelle boarded the deserted ship searching for parts. The ship would be remembered. In 2259, USS Enterprise Transporter Chief Kyle would wear a pin memorializing crewmates he lost on board the Shenzhou. Many crew members would also go on to serve on other Federation starships in the future, such as the USS Discovery. The namesake of the Shenzhou belongs to the 20th century Chinese spacecraft, or the actual Chinese space program itself from the 20th to the 21st centuries of the same name. By the 2260s, the Walker-class starships were a very rare sight in the Federation Starfleet. In remembrance of her ship, and by extension the class, Lieutenant Erica Ortigas kept the model of a Walker-class starship she had previously served upon in her quarters on board the Enterprise. While not canon, as it does take place in Star Trek Online's video game universe, the Walker-class and the USS Shenzhou live on with the Shenzhou class of starship. Introduced in the 21st century is the legendary light battlecruiser. You can actually play that ship class in Star Trek Online. Let me know if you do actually fly that one around. It's pretty cool. The introduction of a Walker class in Star Trek introduced Trekkies to a new age of Star Trek starships. Represented by the USS Shenzhou, the Walker class differed notably from ships before it, especially when we look at the NX-01 Enterprise and her sister ship, the Columbia. The design work for the Walker class comes from veteran Star Trek designer John Eaves. One of the goals was to make the Walker class very different from the original USS Enterprise. First, changing the nacelles to angular and putting the bridge on the underside of a ship helped sell the major difference. Some of John Eaves' earliest sketches would be the basis for other starships also introduced in Star Trek Discovery. Under the direction of the original Discovery showrunner, Brian Fuller, the design team wanted to ensure the Walker class and the USS Shenzhou felt familiar to fans. Therefore, when the Crossfield class USS Discovery was introduced, it would feel radically different. The design team talked about the USS Reliant from Star Trek The Wrath of Khan a lot, as well as the USS Enterprise. Nearly every sketch of a Walker class would follow a similar design style introduced with the Reliant class in the second movie. This being two nacelles connected to a saucer section, but without the secondary hull we find oh so familiar on Federation starships. Some sketches placed the nacelles above the saucer, with the final design had the ones on the underside and angled to a degree. When speaking about the design of the Walker class, Eves originally wanted an escape shuttle at the back of a bridge, something like a captain's yacht. However, this was eventually dropped due to the schedule the design and VFX team were on. Eves even produced a 4 nacelled variant version of the Walker class. While not used, this would actually later be used for the Cardenas class of starship seen in Discovery Season 1. Ultimately, the design of the Walker class was a collaboration between John Eves, the Discovery producers, and the CG teams. For example, once the design was handed over from Eves to the CG teams, it evolved once again. The namesake of the Walker class was the NASA test pilot Joe Walker. There is actually a photo of Walker standing next to Little Joe in the shipyard bar, which is a location visited in the film Star Trek. This is where Kelvin Timeline Captain Kirk meets Kelvin Timeline Captain Pike. Cool detail. Do you spot it in the background? Okay, that's a wrap on the Walker class for today. Maybe we'll revisit this video maybe next year for Star Trek Discovery Season 5. But in all honesty, what do you think of the Walker class? Would you command the ship? Maybe as a successor to the NX-01, but not when the Enterprise Constitution class is around. If you want to keep up to date on all the latest Star Trek news, lore and more, then make sure to hit that subscribe button to never miss a video from the team here at Trek Central. You can also follow us on social media or join our community Discord server. For now, I've been Captain Jack, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Live long and prosper, my friends. Goodbye.